Hey, what's going on? It's Joel from Joel Does Music, back for another interview. So my guest on today's episode decided to come back for round two because, well, he just couldn't resist talking to me after all. From the hard rock and metalcore band Breathein, one of my best friends in the whole world, and lead guitarist of that band, Brian Kang. Now, we spoke about a lot of good stuff. We talked about the band's sold-out debut show in New York City, their recent lineup change, how that changed the dynamic and songwriting process for the band. Of course, gotta talk about memes, the big things coming soon joke, and the big question, what does he consider to be the best video game soundtracks? Here we go. What's up? This is your boy Joel from Joel Does Music, locked in the Content Factory for another interview, this time with one of my good friends, one of my best friends actually,
Aww.
guitar extraordinaire. He's following up, of course, he did interview one with me almost 2 years ago from Breathein, Mr. Brian Kang.
Aww. Was that already 2 years ago?
Almost 2 years ago, because that was when White Flag either had just dropped or it was about to drop.
Yeah, it was like close to 2 years ago already.
But things have changed in the past 2 years. You've had a sold-out show, some more momentum. One of your recent singles popped up to, I think, 33,000 views on YouTube in just under 2 months. So big congrats on that too, man.
Thank you.
So Breathein, a lot has changed, like I just mentioned. But one of the biggest changes that has been going on with you guys is that you had a lineup change. You went from having technically 5 people in the band, even though you were advertising as 4, to now new members. You have Topeng on, I want to say co-lead guitar, or is he primarily rhythm? I know he does some leads too.
It's tricky to say. I mean, the title, like the official titles is I'm technically the lead guitar player.
Right.
Because, I'm an intention whore and I love ripping the solos.
No, that's your forte. I get it, man.
But so the dynamic with Topeng is that he adds like a whole new depth to like our guitar work. Not necessarily in this single or the next single, but like in the forthcoming singles, you're going to see more of his influence. Like Topeng is an extremely diverse guitar player. Like he started getting into a lot of like that math rock, Tim Henson, Polyphia style playing, as well as like studying like jazz chords and everything. So it adds an interesting dynamic to my very straightforward, shred guitar solo playing. And, since Topeng adds that edge, I figured I would double down on like the fast and technical playing. Of course, we could cover each other's tracks where it's like, if he needs another layer of like hybrid pick guitar stuff, I know how to hybrid pick to an extent, so I could at least do that. And if we need those like dual harmonies, then Topeng's right up there with me doing the harmonies in the solo.
Not only is that one of the biggest changes in the lineup, but you have a whole new singer, a whole new face to the band, Mr. Shola Aurora. For anyone watching who doesn't know who he is or kind of his following, explain to them where he came from and what he adds to the band, as far as like a new flavor, new sound.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you guys who don't know, Shola Aurora is a Brooklyn-based singer. He is well known for being the lead singer for a band called Shola Aurora back in the day, and he's been a solo artist for like the last couple years. But he's a vocal powerhouse, easily one of the most talented metal vocals that I know. So what happened was, we went through a lineup change. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with Jay.
Right.
So as a band, we made the collective decision that in order for us to proceed forward and to continue being, an efficient unit, we had to move forward without Jay. So the first person we had in mind was Shola. And, Rob and I were friends with and knew who Shola was. Paul didn't, so, we presented Shola's work, some of his solo stuff like Venom, and we're like, this is, the guy we're thinking of, like, especially, as a unit of 5 people.
Oh,
like,
right.
I feel like if we put our collective experiences together, like, we'd be pretty unstoppable.
And it's crazy because I remember when we were in Skyward together, you didn't play with us when he played with us, but he opened for us on our homecoming show after tour. And I knew like how good he was, but I didn't realize, oh, damn, he is an actual tank on stage.
Tank is an understatement. He easily is like one of the best frontmen I've ever worked with. Like he can easily get a crowd going. Like he's just very charismatic. And, he's again, he's talented at his craft. Like, you know how all of us are very proficient, like, you know, instrumentalists. Shola practices his craft like almost on a daily basis as well. Like, he's a technically trained vocalist. You know, when we first started, it was a little bit more straightforward. And some would even say it's a little bit more generic. But, you know, Shola and Topeng come from like a really J-rock, VK influenced background.
Yeah.
And that itself is a huge niche, but like it's something that is like their own edge, that there's really nobody in the American metal scene that really does that, that's trying to pursue it like, you know, at a really big professional level. Merge that with, you know, what me, Paul, and Rob were doing, where we're doing like the more modern metalcore, you know, a little bit power metal thrown in there, but like, you know, with the drop F tunings and like, you know, staying in trend of what's going on. And I think you have like just a concoction of something that just, again, and I'm not saying this to toot our own horns, but it's like something that's just fresh and unique that really no band has to offer so far in the American scene.
Boom. Shots fired. This episode is sponsored by Airheads.
No, it's not.
No, please don't sue us, Airheads, at all. I just want to say that before we continue with the interview. So it kind of ups the ante a little bit when you added Shola and Topeng to the band, because these are guys that have been performing for years. Like, they are dedicated students to their craft.
Yeah.
And it was definitely shown when you guys did that sold out show in November. Remind me, who is the opening, not the opening band, but the band that you opened for again?
We opened for Jiluka. They are one of the rising metalcore / visual K bands in the Japanese metal scene right now. And they're starting to break into the international market. They actually I don't know if they're still going. I think it's towards the end of the run, but they're on tour with Imminence right now.
Okay. That's pretty good. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. And then the show was 500 people, which was, for a debut, like, that's our live debut. So that's pretty nice.
You guys have only done that one show so far, right?
So far, yes. But that show came as an opportunity through Shola, like, just as he joined.
But in the meanwhile, like, you knocked out your first show. You're just working on still keeping that momentum going up. You're working on more new music. Latest one that came out, latest single was Fallujah, which I liked a lot. Every single song you put out, that, Machine, White Flag, big final boss gamer music energy right there.
Yeah.
But this one felt really different to me. It felt like this is it. Like, this is the sound you guys have finally perfected. Third time's a charm. What was it like writing music with Shola and Topeng in the group versus when it was just you, Paul, Rob, and Jay?
Well, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because this song was actually from Shola and Topeng's camp beforehand.
Okay.
You know, and they presented it as a demo, you know, because ultimately, like, our goal for this year is to, you know, get ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, because of our previous lineup, we couldn't work as efficiently as we wanted to. So now, like, you know, since everybody's nearby, you know, we want to put out as much material as we can. So one of the first songs they presented was Fallujah. And when it came to the writing of it, pretty much the skeleton of the song with, you know, the instrumentals and the vocals were already completed. But it didn't have that breathe-in sauce yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So, you know, there were this is where Paul and I stepped in, where, you know, there's certain things that we really specialize in when it comes to writing music. You know, like me with the riffs and Paul with his like thrashy drums and everything. So, you know, we really wanted to, and this goes for any song that we write, you know, we want to bring it to its full potential, both in terms of the connections and the story that's being told in the music, as well as the energy that it brings. You know, anytime I listen to music, whatever I write, like, I want to make sure that I feel the energy, you know, that I just want to go out and like either conquer the world or like, you know, like punch myself in the face or something. So yeah, no, me and Paul, you know, we took the demo, we made a couple tweaks here and there. And then what we ended up getting was the final product for Fallujah. And actually, there's actually a pretty night and day difference from the original demo. Like, you know, there were some changes. Like, I overhauled the guitar solo, the drum dynamic that Paul added, really, you know, changed the energy of the song. And then, you know, we also actually bumped it up 5 beats.
Ooh, okay. To really bring up the energy.
Yeah, to really bring up the energy.
So that's the breathe-in sauce right there. Just make sure it's high energy.
Yeah, always.
And those blazing dueling solos too.
Oh, yeah.
So it's safe to say there's not a chance in hell you guys will ever put out a ballad.
Actually, it's funny you say that.
Don't tell me you are.
Yeah, actually,
Really?
one of the singles that we plan to put out. I don't want to talk too much about it,
Okay.
Because it's under wraps, but it is a ballad. We do have a ballad in there, but it's not necessarily like a typical ballad that you would think it is. The ballad itself, whatever I can mention, all I will say is that it is something that was written from a very, very, very like deep place from both Shola and Topeng. You know, it reflects a very, you know, like vulnerable and emotional moment when they wrote it. So, you know, that's also another core aspect of Breathe In, not just the energy in the music, but also the content of the music as well has to have that intensity. I think one of the mottos for us is that, you know, 110%, whether it's energy or emotion, like if it's emotional, like I want to fucking cry when I listen to it.
Yes. Honestly, we all need a good cry. There was a quote that I read a while ago where it said, I think it was maybe Tom York from Radiohead, if people stop writing, I think it's like sad songs. I forgot what it was, but it's pretty much like, oh yeah, like we do need sad songs because if you don't put out sad songs that people can relate to, you lost your audience. People love a good sad song.
What I actually meant was this.
You know you're in trouble when people stop listening to sad music.
Yeah.
Because the moment that people stop listening to sad music, they don't want to know anymore.
We're emotionally
They're
redundant.
turning themselves off.
Yeah, and of course. And then the other thing too is people love variety.
Yes.
And actually playing that Jiluka show made us really realize the importance of variety when it comes to your sound when you're playing live.
I love that. Finally, a ballad from Breathe In, but is there still going to be some kind of high energy at a certain part in the song, or is it still too early to tell?
No, there's going to be high energy moments. I
High
don't want to
energy
give away
moments?
too much, but it's, you know, it's not necessarily like just like a you know, a piano ballad or something like that. Like it's there's instruments, and since this is something that Topeng wrote, it is going to be, he's going to actually take the lead for this one.
Wow, you're going to be in the back seat for this one.
Yeah, I'm taking the back seat for this one because, you know, it's, again, if it's written from like something like a special place, like you don't want to take that away from the person. And, you know, it's the, like you get the most raw energy from it when it's actually played the way it is. So
Not to sound like a therapist, but I think you taking the back seat for that song that was mostly from Topeng, it shows just how much trust you have in him as a songwriter and a guitar player, especially taking the lead on that, where it's like, you said earlier, oh, you're an attention whore, you love the lead.
Oh yeah, no, I love it.
For the longest time I've ever known you, yes, you've always been like, I'm doing leads because I like the attention. But it's funny because we always bring it up to you. But the fact that you're trusting Topeng to do it's like, this is your moment. You know when to not cross creative and professional boundaries.
of course.
I think that's something that a lot of bands try to do nowadays. I think it's so important when you're working with someone who is like a recent addition to the band. You want to make sure that, okay, they're proficient, number one. Number two, they're comfortable in the band. So you always work with them on how can you get them to be as comfortable as possible in the band? What could I do? What could they do to show themselves that, hey, they fit right in?
Yeah, and actually it's a funny thing you say that because anytime that there's a demo that's not written by me or like, you know, the, you know, Rob or Paul, like the original side, you know, I always ask to like before, like, you know, I dive into it, like, hey, like, you know, like I'm probably going to like rewrite the solo and I'm going to probably add like, you know, the normal breathe in sauce to the song. Are you guys okay with this? Like I always try to make sure that comfort and that consent is established beforehand because, you know, of course, like when you're in a band dynamic, it becomes like everyone's baby. So there is compromise, but at the same time, you know, there are specific songs where some people, you know, where sometimes there's an attachment developed to the song and the importance of certain things. So, you know, there are certain songs where Topeng's like, yeah, go wild. And then there's other ones where I tell him like, or he tells me like, you know, like actually this one, like, you know, this one has like a special meaning to me and it has a special place to me. So, you know, I want to take the lead for this one. So
I love that. It really shows a lot of growth and maturity. Again, some bands may not have that. It's just, hey, one person is the primary songwriter, whatever they present to the rest of the band members, that's it. You can probably pitch like one or two like revisional notes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's their idea. They're going to go forward with how they want it to sound.
And I think the interesting part about the dynamic yet is that we're slowly getting to that equilibrium where it's like, you know, there's going to be that, like the definitive breathe in sound, if that makes sense. Because right now we're still, because we didn't really have time to write together, like, you know, because the moment Shola joined is like, hey, by the way, I have the show opportunity. So we had to do like 6 months worth of preparation in 2 months for a show. It was very stressful. But, like, so we have a lot of the songs we're doing now are like, oh, this is written by Rob, Brian, and Paul's camp, and then we have songs that were written in Shola and Topeng's camp, and there's like the little bit of bleed over from each party where it's like Topeng would revise some of the chords that I wrote or like add synths and stuff, and Shola, of course, I don't know how to write vocal melodies, so all of the vocal melodies are written by him, and then vice versa, where we're kind of just cross pollinating right now.
Okay.
But then it's going to eventually get to a point where these 2 points are going to reach the center, and then it's going to be like, okay, this is like the definitive writing process.
So it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way you guys are working out like writing credits, it's kind of like the approach that Fall Out Boy takes, where everything is split evenly across all 4 band members. Is that the direction that you guys are kind of going for? Is it just, okay, like you were saying, this is more of a Topeng song, you can have your input, but primarily it'll be him.
Everybody's getting their even share. The reason why is because, like, we want everyone to be happy, and we want everyone to be invested. And the thing is, like, I know a lot of people argue and say, like, oh, you got to earn your keep and everything, and I understand that argument, but at the same time, that's not, like, the way a band dynamic works is there's always going to be people who take the forefront, and then naturally there's going to be people who take the back seat. So no matter what, like, that dynamic always exists. So it kind of already is, and I really hate to say this, but it's kind of like a predetermined thing. And because of that, like, if band members don't contribute, or if they feel like they're not getting opportunities to present themselves or be happy, that leads to members leaving a lot sooner. And, like, my goal is I want to preserve, I said that originally, and then we went through a lineup change. But, like, with this lineup, like, I feel like we really struck gold. So I really want to preserve that for as long as possible. So we've all had the conversation about it, and it's like, yeah, that we want to make sure everything is, like, evenly split. And of course, we encourage everybody to, put in their fair share. Like, whether it's Topeng comes up with a riff, I come up with a riff, we come up with the skeletons, we revise it. Rob also revises his bass parts. Paul also revises his drums. So everybody does play a part.
I mentioned earlier that Breathein's music has that big final boss energy from a video game. It's video game core, as I call it sometimes.
Oh my God.
It is. It's just so high energy. Like you were saying, when you listen to songs like White Flag, you're kind of picturing, all right, you're about to approach the final boss in the game. I think Bloodborne, for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I got to ask this, man. What are some video games that have the best soundtrack?
You picked the worst member in the band to ask this question.
I think I know where this is going.
I'm always going to say, I'm going to reference some Sonic game.
My brother in Christ. There are more games than Sonic.
No, I know, but I guess, I've had time to think about this. So, of course, I'm going to say any of the Sonic the Hedgehog games because, like, their soundtrack just goes unnecessarily hard for no reason. Like, especially when I started Breathein, like, Sonic Frontiers was the main one because, the drop F guitars to, like, Kellen Quinn and, like, writing it in, like, a fast post-hardcore kind of sound, that was fresh. For me, Kingdom Hearts is another one. That one, the soundtrack is very orchestral and it's like really emotional and super sad. It makes, I kid you not, like Christy and I have like cried over the soundtrack.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. So
wow.
And also too, like, Shola's a huge Kingdom Hearts fan as well, so it kind of makes sense. And then just, any other anime game really, like, it could be, Dragon Ball Z, like, a lot of the Dragon Ball Z soundtracks have been like really, really nice. Like, especially the older games. I mean, granted, the old music director for a lot of the old Dragon Ball Z games was fired because of plagiarism. But besides that
irony in that.
Yeah, besides that fact, though, like, things like that, Yu Yu Hakusho, like, kind of have that, like, 90s, like, neo-funk and soul vibe to it, which is really cool. And, it always takes you back to that kind of, like, 90s anime nostalgia or, like, the early 2000s with, like, Toonami and stuff.
See, I feel like a normie because my answers are very much centered on normie video games. Like games we were also introduced to as kids, obviously Final Fantasy, games like that we were introduced to, but I never really got into those games. Or Dragon Ball Z, I played it, again, never became a solid fan like you are. You're a diehard.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just whenever I think of video game soundtracks, I think of Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, and San Andreas. Like, those are my gateway into just...
I mean, those are good soundtracks, too.
Tony Hawk Underground 2.
Yeah, that one.
That soundtrack, oh, man.
I forgot. Didn't Zave work on, like, one of the soundtracks for that? Or was it, like, a documentary or something?
I think a documentary.
It had to do with the Tony Hawk series, though.
But Tony Hawk Underground... GTA San Andreas and Vice City, like all those games introduced me to songs that I still listen to today, especially Brian Adams' Run to You, or like Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle from San Andreas. Like,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, wow, this is the best thing ever to come into my life.
Yeah, I felt.
Tell me more about well, let's backtrack a little bit. So you did the sold out show in November.
Yeah.
You still have yet to play some shows, but is there a possibility that you'll have one coming up at some point very soon? What's in the books?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're trying to set something up. We're going to try to get a handful of shows in this year as well. I can't say anything at the moment, but, expect to see us again. That's all I'm going to say.
You're always very sneaky when it comes to your plans.
Define sneaky, because, a good magician never shows his tricks.
That's true. At least you're not falling into like that whole cliche where it's like big things coming soon.
No, I mean, I never want to be the guy that's like, oh, big thing.
What's your take on bands like that?
I mean, if you have big things coming soon, you have big things coming soon. Some bands actually deliver, some bands don't, but
that's the thing. I feel that's a running joke. It's just they always joke about having big things coming soon, and it's a sexual assault.
Oh my God.
allegation.
Jesus Christ.
Or a band just breaking up, or just members leaving.
I think a lot of the reason why, and it is, like a lot of bands end up kind of like overestimating like what they're doing, and I think you've mentioned this in a previous interview where it's like now, since we're in a social media driven era with short form content. Yeah. The important thing is to get ahead of the curve and stay on top, which is currently what we're trying to do. But after that, if it's the best way I could put it is if you do have like a big plan or a big thing, it'll speak for itself. There's no reason to hype it up. I do like what bands do where they kind of drop like no context teasers of just like, oh, if they have an announcement or if like a music video is coming out or for tour, like they just literally drop a little snippet and then just tell you the date that the announcement's going to be.
Right.
I think that's all you need.
Yeah, but for some bands, like Bad Omens, for example, they were never very straightforward with teasing new music. Like, they've been teasing this upcoming era for quite some time where it's just, I forgot what it was. It was like Noah Sebastian's new Mask, and then it was just something with Concrete Jungle Forever, or I forgot, a lyric from Artificial Suicide. It's very ominous and mysterious. It kind of, I guess I want to say, helps to create uniqueness in their marketing.
It really puts a sense of mystique, and Bad Omens is a band where it's like they have the demand behind it, so it's like anything they drop, it whether it's like breadcrumbs, like people will be curious about it, so they could kind of do whatever they want. But it's like when you have that big of a following, like being cryptic and everything works, so I'm sure it's going to be like something really like huge. I mean, Shola, actually, you know what? Since you mentioned Bad Omens, Shola would probably be a much better person for this topic because he is like an OG Bad Omens fan. Like he was like they're going to blow up. Like before
me too. Yeah, I got into them in 2016 when they started touring with Sumerian.
Yeah. So I mean,
think about.
I don't know too much about the Bad Omens lore, so.
I mean, I know decent enough. I got into them again late 2016 when that first album came out. I liked it, and I've been a fan ever since. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything negatively about fans who got into them when The Death of Peace of Mind came out. It's like, all right, whatever album you discover them through, cool. As long as you genuinely like the music, you're not one of those annoying TikTok fans that only likes that one song that we all know, and I'm not going to say it because TikTok.
I mean, it's all good. Fans are fans, and that's just a part of the process where as a band gets bigger, they're going to appeal to a wider audience. It just happens,
Fine,
so
I'll say the song name. Fine. Just pretend.
So it's like one of those things where it's like, I personally never have a problem with that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's only like if you're at a concert and like there's no etiquette, then that's a different story.
Yeah. I feel like I'm glad you touched on that because I feel, and definitely say your piece on this, I feel like concert etiquette, ever since we bounced back from COVID, is pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides of the coin to this for me. The first side being like there are cases like of like just lack of awareness in the situation. Like I've seen videos of like people like literally getting on stage and like taking selfie videos. And it's like really, really disrespectful. But on the other end too, like these are really extreme cases that are like usually showcased on TikTok. Like if you go to like most concerts, like you have maybe like a 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 15 chance of seeing that. Like it's not really typically the norm per se, but it's just, social media has a tendency of not necessarily blowing up, but it tends to put a lot of extreme situations under the microscope where it comes off as if it's the norm. Like it kind of blows it out of proportion in a way.
It's just crazy thinking like 10 years ago when I was going to concerts or a little bit longer and then comparing, contrasting it to now, it's just like, do people not know how to behave at a concert or just be aware like, hey, listen, stop flailing your limbs around, or if you go in the pit, expect yourself to be tossed around. If that's not your thing, back away a little bit. But also that goes on the same token for people that are actively starting the pit. Just don't need to flail your limbs around or just shove everybody in sight or trample on someone. Have a good time. If someone's on the floor, pick them up.
Precisely.
Brian Kang from Breathein. All right, we are doing a segment called The Floor's All Yours. So you're going to look into this one camera right here that's capturing your solo shot. Look into the camera, tell the people what you have going on next, and tease anything too.
So what I have going on next is that Joel and I are going to get ice cream fudge sundaes after this interview. Okay, yeah, no, but in all seriousness, actually that is going to happen, but...
Jesus, I'm trying to hold my laughter in. This is your segment, man.
I know. Okay, so what's going on is that Breathein is, we're at the tail end of the Fallujah single cycle, so we have one more surprise for you guys before we move on to the next single. We're working on new material. We're going to try to have, including Fallujah, the total being 3 to 4 singles out this year. Expect to see us soon, whether it's shows, content, new music. That's all I could really say for now, and just give us a follow. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram, TikToks, and all social media at Breathein Band. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I really can't say much until cat's out of the bag.
Always full of mystery.
You got to think ahead. They can't know your steps.
No, of course not. You'd be lacking big time if they knew your steps.
Exactly.
Brian Kang from Breathein. That does it for today's episode of Joel Does Music. Much love and good vibes. Peace out.
We're going to go on our ice cream sundae date now.
All right. Okay. Bye.